In this video, we will show you how to replace your fuel level sensor on this Chevy Trailblazer. This will be located inside of your fuel tank. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Open your hood and make your way along the driver's side. Just behind the battery is where you're going to find your fuse box. You'll find that you have two squeeze tabs, one right here and one located directly behind it. Just go ahead and squeeze those in and lift this cover up and off of here. Now once you have that off of there, we're going to pay attention in this area. We're looking for a relay that says fuel pump. You can see it right down along here. It's relay number 41. Now we'll use the legend, and you can see that I marked right where that relay is located. Relay 41. Now that we've taken note of that, let's make our way right here and we'll lift up on this plastic cover and we can set this aside. Inside this area is where you're going to find all of your fuses and your relays. This is the relay that we will be removing. Take hold of that, give it a little wiggle, and lift it up and out of place. Give it a quick inspection for corrosion or damage, and we'll set this aside for now. Now at this point, let's make our way out back to that gas cap. Go ahead and remove that and set that aside. Continue on by attempting to start the vehicle. What you'll find is that the vehicle either starts up and stalls, or it doesn't start at all. That's because we removed the fuel pressure from inside the fuel system. Once we've done that, we can continue back in here and we'll reinstall our relay. Let's reinstall that relay into the same exact position as where we had removed it and reinstall our covers. Let's make our way over to the negative battery terminal. Use an 8mm to loosen this up. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is safely raise and support the vehicle because we will have to drop the fuel tank down. You'll find just underneath your muffler and underneath the fuel tank, you have a cross member that's held in place with two 15mm headed bolts. Remove the pair and the cross brace. Now let's move back above the rear differential. Along the backside of the fuel tank is where you're going to find your fuel inlet tube leading directly into the fuel tank. Loosen the clamp and remove the hose from the fuel tank. You might have to wiggle it around a little bit. For this, we'll use a 7mm. Now that I have that loose, we'll slide it up the hose. We can get that out of the way for now. Now we need to break the hose free from the fuel tank. You can do that using a hose pick. Just be extremely careful not to damage the hose because we will be reusing this. Right inside this area. There we are. That was easy. Now that we have that disconnected, let's move along to disconnecting some of our lines along the backside here. To disconnect these, you'll find that you have a small tab that you can press in to unlock this, and then you should be able to separate each one of these as needed. Now sometimes to squeeze this in, you can do it by hand. Just go ahead and squeeze right in on that and then separate it. If you can't squeeze it by hand, you could also try using some pliers if needed. There's one. As we remove these, you want to give them a close inspection. Make sure that everything is still in good condition and reusable. There is one more line up top here. Let's also get that one. There we go. There's that one. At this point, we have all of these lines disconnected. Let's also disconnect this electrical connector. For this, there's a small locking tab. You can grab hold of that, gently pull it away, and then you can separate this. A quick check for corrosion, and we'll set that aside. Now let's move along the front of the fuel tank. you're going to find that you have two fuel lines making their way up above this area. Each one of these needs to be disconnected in the same way that we disconnected the other lines. Now keep in mind there could still be a little bit of fuel left in these lines, so be extremely careful. To disconnect these, it's the same exact process as along the rear. You'll find that you have a small squeeze tab that you can squeeze in to unlock this, and then you should be able to separate it. If you find that it does not want to break free in this area, go ahead and follow the line towards the forward area where it connects in as well, and you can try from there. Squeeze in on that tab. There's our first line. Now that we have that line disconnected, let's also disconnect the other line. Same process. Go ahead and squeeze in that tab, give it a little twist, and separate it. Keep in mind there could be fuel in this area once again. There we go. All right, we get some fuel coming out of here. We'll just let that drain into our collection bucket. Now the next thing we'll have to do is apply some support underneath the fuel tank, making sure that we can still gain access to each one of those fuel straps. Try to get this in the center, distribute the weight properly. Let's start with removing the forward strap. To do this, we'll remove our 15mm bolt, carefully start pulling the strap downward, and pull it away up along this area. We'll give that strap a quick inspection and set it aside. Now let's move to our rearward strap. Now as we pull this down, what you're going to find is that you will have to twist the strap to be able to remove it, but the fuel tank and the drive shaft might be in the way to do so. Now if that's the case, just go ahead and carefully start lowering the fuel tank down, being extremely careful not to damage the strap in any way, because we do have to reuse it. Now we can start lowering the fuel tank. We'll do this slowly. There is still wiring harnesses attached up along the top. All right, let's have a look up along the top of the fuel tank. Go ahead and grab onto this electrical connector. You'll find that it has a locking tab up along the top. Just gently flex that to unlock it and slide it out of place. Give it a quick check for corrosion, and we can set this one aside. Now we'll move along to the rearward connector here. You'll find that this has a red locking tab right where my thumb is. We'll have to pry that out of the way, and then we can squeeze this to unlock it. Once again, a quick check for corrosion. Now we can lower the fuel tank to an area that we can remove that fuel pump assembly. Now once you have the tank low enough that you can start working on it, what you're probably going to find is along the top, it's completely rusted like this one right here. Dirt and debris will sit on top of that, and so will moisture. We have to clean off as much of this as possible so we can remove this without anything falling into the fuel tank. Use compressed air or whatever you might happen to have. Now that we have this cleaned off as much as possible, let's continue on with some penetrant. We're going to have to break free the locking ring from the locking tabs that are part of the fuel tank. Let this do its job. Now we'll lower the tank safely down to the ground so we can continue working on it. Now in this area, the tank is secured, so we don't have to worry about it falling over. Have a look up along the top of the tank. This is where the fuel pump sending unit will be located, right in the center here. Now there is two more lines that are connected to this that we will have to remove. To remove these, it's the same as all the rest of the clips. Press in on the locking tab and gently pull it out of place. There we are. We'll lift that up and off of there. Give it a quick inspection. We'll set this line aside for now. Now looking at the top of this, I can tell that the fuel pump assembly is in very poor condition. If yours looks like this, replace the entire thing. We'll press in on that locking clip, give this a little wiggle, and we should be able to slide it out. There we are. We'll give this a quick inspection as well, and then we can continue. Now that we have the lines off of there, we're going to continue on by cleaning up the area one more time. As you can tell, there's a lot of miscellaneous debris up in this area because I was working it around quite a bit. The next thing we'll do is continue on with a hammer and a brass punch. We want to be extremely careful not to cause any sparks while doing this. We have to turn this locking ring counterclockwise. Now while we're doing that, we're paying attention to the slots that are in the locking ring in comparison to each one of the studs that are coming up and out of the fuel tank. Now once you have that locking ring off of there, it's important to make sure that you give it a close inspection. A little bit of rust is okay, but if it's rotted and weak, you need to replace it. This one looks fine. I'll set it aside. Let's pry this up and out of place. Now we can start removing this from the fuel tank. Now that we have that out of there, let's go ahead and clean up this area and give it a close inspection. We want to make sure that the fuel tank is not damaged in any way. Try to remove as much of the debris as possible without getting any inside the fuel tank. Now that we have the fuel pump sending unit out of the vehicle, we can continue on to removing the level sensor from it. To do this, you can use a small screwdriver or pick. Along the bottom of the level sensor, if you were to look on the fuel pump assembly itself, you're going to find that you have a small locking tab that you need to press in on, and then you can press this level sensor down and out of its original position. Slide this down. Now this wiring should come through this slot right here. I'll just put it in there, slide it out. Follow the wiring all the way up to the top. I'm going to give this a little spin so we can have a look. Now looking along the top of this area, you'll find that you have two electrical connectors. One of them has considerably smaller wires than the other. The one with the smaller wires is the one for the level sensor, so that's the one that we'll be removing. Looking along the side of this electrical connector, this is where the locking tab would be located, right on the inboard side of the connector. Go ahead and use your small screwdriver or pick, gently press in on that locking tab, and we'll slide this out of position. I always like to give each end a quick inspection for corrosion. It only makes sense. And now we can start pulling this wiring out through the plastic sheathing. There it is, friend. All right, now it's time to install our brand new fuel level sensor. Take that wiring harness and slide it right up through that plastic sheathing. Bring it all the way up to the top and connect in your electrical connector. Now we'll align our locking tab, which is along the side of the connector, and make sure it's pressed in. Press it in, listen for a click, give that a tug to make sure it's secure. You don't want this falling off while you're driving down the road. Let's make our way all the way down to the bottom and we'll re-secure that level sensor as well. Now for this, if you were looking along the backside, you can tell that you have these tabs that protrude out. That will fit inside this groove. We'll bring it up past this little lock in front of my index finger. Get this aligned. Listen for a click. Try to press it out of position. If it falls right out, that locking tab is not doing its job. Now we'll bring the wiring up into its proper place here so it is secured properly. Careful not to damage it, obviously. We'll just double check everything. And now we can get this in the vehicle. Let's install our rubber gasket. Should fit right into this groove. Now we can install our fuel pump sending unit. When you do so, you want to pay attention to this area right here and this area on the fuel tank. You'll find that there's a small arrow. That's where that tab needs to be aligned with. As we bring this down into position, make sure you take that level sensor and slide it down inside the tank as we go. Start bringing the fuel pump assembly down and in. Align our mounting points here. We'll just slide this right down. Double check that gasket to make sure it's seated all the way around while you continue pressing this down. Once you've done so and it's properly aligned, go ahead and install that locking clamp. As you can tell, I have this aligned where it needs to be. This tab is facing towards my arrow and the lines are facing exactly where they're going to connect into. Time for the locking ring. It's a good idea to hold down the fuel pump assembly while you align this. Now, while pressing this down, we're going to have to turn it clockwise to lock it in. These tabs need to fit into the slots and lock in properly. Make sure each and every one is locked. Let's give this a little twist. Continue with your hammer and punch. We'll just give this a couple loving bonks. Just double check all the way around. Oh yeah, that's secured. Resecure your lines. Press this in. Listen for a click from that locking tab. We'll give it a tug to make sure it's secure. Now we'll do this one. Once again, listening for a click. All right, that one's nice and tight as well. Now, once we have that fully secured, let's continue on with bringing the tank into the original position. Before we put it all the way against the body of the vehicle, you need to make sure that you reconnect your electrical connectors along the top. Now, as for this larger one, you remember, as we disconnected it, it did have a red locking tab. So to reconnect this, we'll slide it into place. Listen for a click from that and give it a nice tug. I want to make sure that's secure. Once you are sure that that is secured properly in place, we'll continue on by locking it in place with that red locking tab. Just go ahead and slide it. Just one more check on that connector. It's a lot easier to do this now than when it's up against the vehicle. Now we'll reconnect the next one. Just go ahead and slide that in there. Listen for a click. That locking tab should fit right along here. At this point, we'll continue on raising this up. Now, as we continue bringing this up, let's pay attention along the back side of the fuel tank. We want to make sure that we reconnect that fuel filler hose to the neck of the tank itself as we bring this up. Once you're sure you have that completely bottomed out against the tank, go ahead and tighten your clamp. Double check to make sure that's secure. Let's reconnect our electrical connector here. Press that in, listen for a click, give it a tug, make sure it's secure. Start connecting in the lines. Press it in, listen for a click, give them a tug as you go. Last one. There we go. Double check each one of these connections before you continue. We finished in the back, let's make our way to the front. We have those two lines that we need to connect. Press it in, listen for a click, Give each one of these a tug as you continue. Yep, these are nice and tight. Start putting this forward strap into the proper position. And we can bring the tank up a little further here. Once you have that up, continue on to bringing the strap over to its position along the frame. Starting your mounting bolt. We won't tighten this up yet. We're going to make our way to the back and do the same thing. Get the strap in position as well. All right, let's tighten both of these. Now, once you're sure both of those are tight, remove the support from under your fuel tank. Now we can put on our cross member. We'll be using those 15mm headed bolts. Go ahead and start in each side, and then you can snug them up. Okay friends, we've got everything done underneath the vehicle. Before we get out from underneath it, just give everything one last check. Make sure each and every one of your connectors is connected properly. Once you've done so, you can make your way out from underneath the vehicle, get it back on the ground, and we'll reinsert that fuel cap. Reconnect your negative battery terminal. Start this in here by hand. Snug it up with your 8mm. Double check to make sure it's secured. Now that we've reconnected the negative battery terminal, the next thing we're going to do is attempt to start up the vehicle. You might find you have a long crank at first. That's due to the fact that it has to build up pressure through the fuel system all the way up to the engine before the engine can burn it up in the combustion chamber. Once you have the vehicle running, let it run for a little while and double check to make sure you don't have any fuel leaks under the vehicle. After that, go ahead and close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.